Okay, new year, new return to doing this properly. If you've been watching Season 7 of the Prismatic Draft League so far, thank you for bearing with me through the small disruptions in the production here. But now we are back to normal, and what's more, it's time for me to make my Season 7 debut. Of course, my co-coach Spoogie played the first 2 weeks for us, and I don't know how we're going to distribute the rest of the sets. Spoogie might well be stepping in again at some points, but I'm definitely excited to finally play a set here. To be honest, have been feeling a little bit weirdly disconnected from the team that I drafted with Spoogie, but the team that I drafted here compared to past drafts, because I haven't actually played a game with these Pokemon yet, but it's finally time to get that done. And before we get into the team that I've prepared for Week 3, we're going to look at the matchup. Like I said, we're doing things properly again. We're taking on the Azure Chatots this week, and they have a very scary team with a lot of balanced, well-rounded options and also some interesting tricks up their sleeve. So at time of recording, I believe it was in their most recent set where we saw them use the Dancer strategies. Volcarona setting up Quiver Dance, Oricorio also able to set up Quiver Dance, but then with its Dancer ability, able to copy any dance move that another Pokemon uses. And that means that you can use Quiver Dance twice in the same turn if you set up Oricorio and Volcarona together. I don't remember that we actually saw them do that. I don't remember, but we did see the Quiver Dance Oricorio with the Baton Pass setting up teammates. And then, of course, there's not really an obvious Sunsetter on this team. Maybe Meowstic gets Sunny Day. I actually haven't checked. If so, it would be a priority Sunsetter. But Volcarona and Lilligant are pretty well positioned to take advantage of the sun if they do get that set up somehow. Lilligant able to throw off Sleep Powders, able to give them some speed control with After You. Then they have Quaquaval as a physical water and fighting type threat. So really able to cover for some of the weaknesses that Pokemon like Volcarona and Lilligant have trouble dealing with. And then a few other really interesting pieces here, like Dedenne is a reasonably fast electric type with some disruptive options, so have to take that Pokemon seriously in prep. Stantler, I don't think is super likely to show up, but it is their Trick Room setter, and they do have some slow Pokemon that could potentially take advantage of Trick Room. Plus, Intimidate could actually be pretty strong into some of the very powerful physical threats that we have, although they do have to keep the Defiant Passimian in mind. We've seen them bring Sudowoodo to some sets, but I don't think we ever saw what it can do. I thought it might get Wide Guard, but I checked and it doesn't. So, yeah, I don't necessarily know what Sudowoodo is for, but of course it can take a hit with Sturdy and probably do something back. The Slacking might look a little dubious because of its Truant ability, but Lilligant does get Worry Seed, so they do have that duo able to turn the ability off if they want. And that's something I'll have to keep in mind if I see the Slacking at preview. If I see the Meowstic at preview, I have to be alert to a possible manual Psychic Terrain covering for some of the priority options on our team. And then the Corviknight is a whole other setup threat that we've seen put in work next to Volcarona, or even on its own once it got a nice Baton Pass from the Oricorio. So there are a lot of different ways they can play this team, and it's difficult to cover for everything. But at the same time, they can't bring everything to the set. So I've tried to have some kind of answer to most of what they can bring, at least. I mean, I don't necessarily know what I do if I see the Slacking. Actually, I do have some options, at least to... I do at least have redirection to redirect the Worry Seed away, so that's something that I can keep in mind if I see the Slacking. But yeah, I've tried to be kind of flexible, kind of fluid with the team that I bring to this one, because there are a lot of possible threats and I don't know which ones I'll actually see, so what kind of mode I bring to the game and what kind of game plan goes with that will depend very much on what I see at preview. But anyway, that's the team, and here's a refresher on our team because I haven't shown them all together in a little while, but of course I can only choose 6 to bring to this third week of the season, my first week playing, and it starts, unsurprisingly, with our first draft pick, Kommo-o. Now, I talked up how versatile Kommo-o is in the draft recap, but Spoogie has been spamming the Throat Spray Clangorous Soul set, and I don't see much reason to deviate from that in this particular matchup. Kommo-o, at least in this matchup, I want to just be setting up and breaking through the opposing team if possible. One thing I actually do have to keep in mind, and I did check this before I committed to the set, Or Clangorous Soul does count as a dance move. So if I click Clangorous Soul in front of Oricorio, Oricorio will also use the same move, which is a pretty good reason for them to bring Oricorio to this matchup. So yeah, I definitely have to be alert to that. I probably don't want to set up in front of that Pokemon. The good news is Oricorio is not especially strong without setup, so I do have some tools to deal with it. But yeah, it's just a very straightforward Omni-boosting offensive kommo-o, trying to break through the opposing team. Terra Fire can cover for any kind of fairy coverage they might throw out there. Something like a Terra Fairy Volcarona, which is, well, Reg H is over now, so I can't say is good in Reg H, but was good in Reg H, and so might be something on their radar for this draft matchup. Even something like the Dedenne, if they bring that, because that's the only fairy type on their team. Into our double dragons, that might be a pretty good incentive to bring that Pokemon. Yeah, so Terra Fire, of course, gives kommo-o that fairy resistance, but perhaps more importantly, it boosts Flamethrower, which is here primarily as coverage into Corviknight, because dragon types are overall pretty strong into a lot of the opponent's team. Again, they only have the one fairy in Dedenne. They have a lot of fire, water, grass stuff, and you'll see that I've sprinkled some Dragon Terras through this team, as well as bringing natural dragon types. With all that in mind, Corviknight is a Pokemon that I have to take seriously, because it's very easy for me to build out this team in a way that it's walled by Corviknight, and obviously I want to avoid that. So yeah, Terra Fire, Flamethrower, kommo-o, nothing too groundbreaking. The Throat Spray to boost the special attack further, really try to break through the opposing team with this Pokemon. And I've chosen Overcoat for the ability because there just aren't that many sound moves or bullet/ball moves that I'm especially worried about from the opposing team. I didn't really see much value in soundproof or bulletproof, and with the Lilligant potentially having Sleep Powder, or even the Volcarona having Rage Powder. You know, if I want to snipe the Corviknight with a Flamethrower, I don't want to be redirected by the Volcarona, so Overcoat definitely seems like the most useful of the three abilities in this matchup, even if the use cases for it are pretty niche. They're at least more obvious than the ones for the other two abilities. Up next, I've kind of foreshadowed this already, but we are bringing the double dragons with the Salamence. Again, I do have to watch out for Corviknight and Dedenne, but otherwise, and also something like Triple Axle Quaquaval, but otherwise, dragon types are pretty strong into my opponent's team. I considered a few different Salamence sets. I thought about Choice Scarf, but Salamence is already at max speed, probably going to outrun a lot of their team. They do have some Pokemon that are naturally faster, but I have some... I have one or two other tools for that, as you'll see as we go through this, but I figured I wanted some power, and I was thinking about a Dragon Dance set as well, but there's already a lot of setup offense on this team, especially with the kommo-o, so I thought mixing in something that can hit harder immediately is probably the way to go. And with all the coverage I wanted on Salamence, I didn't think I had room for Protect anyway, and I can improve its offensive coverage a little bit more if I just run 4 attacks, and at that point, why not a Choice Band? Moxie instead of Intimidate, so it does still have the ability to boost, but actually the real reason I'm bringing that is, one, the opponent's team has a lot of special offense, so the marginal value of Intimidate is not that great in this matchup. It might be good to get one into Quaquaval or Slacking. On the other hand, either one of those can carry a Clear Amulet, and they can spare that item pretty easily for one of those two Pokemon. But the main reason I'm not bringing Intimidate is I'm definitely expecting to see the Corviknight, and of course Mirror Armor will redirect the Intimidate back into my own Salamence, which is something I want to avoid. So I'm bringing Moxie less for that ability in itself, and more because I don't want Intimidate in this matchup. Probably, I think. But if I get some Moxie boosts, that might be nice. Flying Terra Blast does a lot of damage into most of my opponent's team. Corviknight and Dedenne, the usual suspects, resist it, and so does Sudowoodo. But a lot of their more spammable Pokemon, well, Corviknight's pretty splashable, but some of the other core pieces of their team take at least neutral damage from flying. And two of the Pokemon I'm worried about, Volcarona and Lilligant, are very seriously threatened, of course, by a Stab, Terra-boosted flying attack. So I don't necessarily have much of a game plan in terms of what Pokemon I'll Terastallize where, but if I'm leaning on Salamence for offense in some particular mode, it's probably the first Pokemon that I want to Terastallize. And yeah, that Choice Banded Flying Terra Blast, I'm expecting to do a lot of damage to the opponent. Rock Slide is strong into something like a Volcarona or a Choreo setup duo, just trying to pick those Pokemon off before they can really run away with the game. Temper Flare is honestly a move that I'd kind of forgotten about, but I was scrolling through Salamance's move list to see if I had something better than Fire Fang to cover Corviknight, and I do. An unterrestrialized Corviknight, my best option into that here is Temper Flare. I don't think it's very likely that I click it, but I think it's important to have that coverage available. And if you've practically forgotten about Temper Flare as well, it's basically a fire type Stomping Tantrum, so a little bit stronger and more consistent than Fire Fang. And then Outrage is the last move I tacked on once I committed to 4 attacks. It's obviously kind of high risk, high reward, but again, with only Corviknight and Dedenne comfortably taking Dragon types, at least before Terra, I do have to be careful about clicking Outrage because I can't choose its target, and of course Salamence is locked in and then gets confused at the end. But if the position is right, I mean, Choice Band Outrage is just going to shred most of the opponent's team. That said, I'd rather be clicking Terra Blast if the position allows for it. Up next, so I have these 2 strong attackers, but it's time to start giving them some support. Obviously, the opponent does have checks for both of them that I've been talking about throughout. And so, it would be nice to take some of the heat off of these Pokemon so that they can more smoothly set up in kommo-o's case or just do damage for Salamence, especially into faster opponents. So we have a redirection supporter in, you probably guessed it, Magmortar. Magmortar is here. Obviously, I could have run Vital Spirit and some kind of like recovery item or even like a Pasho Berry maybe. But there wasn't an item that I especially loved on this Pokemon other than the Citrus Berry, which is already committed somewhere else. And getting a Flame Body Burn into something like Quaquaval or Corviknight could potentially be very helpful because you'll notice I'm talking a lot about the Quaquaval. Quaquaval has just the right stats and coverage to really be a pain for this team to deal with if I don't get the positioning just right. And if it's allowed to boost its speed with Aqua Step, and again, maybe it brings some ice coverage so the Dragon types can't handle it easily. So, there's not a ton of physical offense on the opponent's team, but I think having the possibility of getting a lucky burn into a physical attacker is worthwhile here. And given that I don't feel very strongly about what to do with Magmortar's item slot, I'm willing to put the safety goggles there to protect it from something like a Lilligant Sleep Powder. I've also invested heavily in physical bulk, again, because I want this Pokemon to be able to take on the opponent's physical attackers. And at least before Terra, it doesn't really have all that much to be afraid of from a Volcarona or a Lilligant anyway. So I feel like I can rely to an extent on its resistances against the special attackers, and covering for the physical attackers is more important here. That said, it is mixed bulk, obviously. Yeah, you see the calm nature there. Terra Water, so you've seen the Fire Terra on kommo-o and the Flying on Salamence. The rest of the team pretty much just has Dragon and Water sprinkled around. The difference, of course, is that Water is vulnerable to electric coverage from the Dedenne, as well as Lilligant's grass attacks, and even like a Giga Drain from Volcarona. But it is better cover into Quaquaval because I'm assuming if I see the Quaquaval, it probably has ice coverage into this double Dragon team. So if I want Magmortar to be able to check Quaquaval to an extent, and I do, then I can't be running Terra Dragon and opening up that weakness. Terra Water should be, at worst, neutral damage from any kind of coverage that the Quaquaval has, most likely. And that's just the fighting coverage. Of course, it resists the water and ice attacks that I think are the most likely to come from that Pokemon. So that's why it's Water on this set. And then just a pretty straightforward moveset. Heat Wave, of course, gives my team a stab fire type attack, also on the special side, so it can hit a physically boosted Corviknight still pretty hard. Honestly, I might want to consider like a flamethrower to avoid missing, but I think Heat Wave is probably okay. Again, I've checked and the opponent doesn't have Wide Guard on their team unless there's some really obscure Pokemon that gets it that I missed. And then Scorching Sands is able to cover for... what is Scorching Sands here specifically for? I don't necessarily remember, but of course it gives Magmortar a little bit more coverage and another move that has a decent chance of burning opponents. Up next, and also on the support side, while we're going all in on support for this Pokemon, it's Morgrem. with a pretty straightforward Grimmsnarl-esque set. This one more invested in special bulk because, again, unless I'm specifically trying to cover for Corviknight and Quaquaval, it's special attackers that seem more troublesome on the opponent's team for the most part, especially that Volcarona. But, this Morgrim is fully invested in bulk. Hopefully it can take some hits on either side. I still haven't done a ton of calking this week. Maybe that part of this operation is still not back to normal, but I've just thrown some bulk onto this Morgrim with a bias towards special. And yeah, very straightforward. Reflect, Light Screen, Thunder Wave is my main speed control tech since I don't have Tailwind on Salamence this week. And then Parting Shot in combination with Reflect and Light Screen hopefully weakens the opponent's offense enough that my strong attackers like kommo-o and Salamence have opportunities to break through. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's pretty straightforward. I don't generally love having a Pokemon with no attacking moves, but I have so much offense on other parts of this team that I think we're just going to risk it with this Morgrim here. And Terra Dragon, as previously discussed, the opponent has a lot of fire, water, and grass type offense. And so Dragon is reasonably good here to take a hit in a pinch, although I do have to watch out for something like a Fairy Terra on something or a Triple Axle Quaquaval. Up next, we have Azumarill. So this is our third big, heavy attacker that in some game plans can hopefully break through. I knew right away that I wanted to bring the first four Pokemon, kommo-o, Salamence, Magmortar, and Morgrim, to this matchup. I was a little bit less certain about the last two slots, but Azumarill is just kind of hard to ignore because it's one of the strongest Pokemon that we have in this draft. And I was thinking about like an Assault Vest set to help patch up my Volcarona matchup a little bit more, but I wasn't feeling very inspired by that, so we're just going straight to Belly Drum Azumarill. I have Redirection with Magmortar, I have Screens with Grimmsnarl. There should be ways to get opportunities to set this up. Terra Dragon, for reasons already discussed, it'll help it take an electric or grass attack as needed. And then pretty straightforward Citrus Berry with even HP so that the Citrus Berry will activate after a Belly Drum. Aqua Jet, Play Rough, and I would like to have Protect in the last move slot. The reason I've gone with Ice Spinner is, again, I'm alert to the possibility of the Meowstic setting up manual Psychic Terrain, which would prevent Azumarill from clicking Aqua Jet, which is Azumarill's best coverage into a lot of the opponent's team, because their strongest threats are things like Volcarona and Corviknight that aren't really afraid of taking a Play Rough, and Azumarill is one of the slowest Pokemon in this matchup anyway. It's not like I'm bringing Trick Room. I don't think the opponent is likely to bring Trick Room. So the speed and type coverage of Aqua Jet are pretty important to this set. I considered a few different ways to fight for terrain control if I needed to. Like, I considered putting Misty Terrain on Morgrim at one point, but there wasn't really any one of these four moves that I wanted to drop for that. I think Thunder Wave could potentially swing a game at some point, and Parting Shot with the pivoting options that it opens up might be too important. So in the end, I think if I see Meowstic, I consider leading Azumarill into that. And if I get Azumarill on the field with Meowstic, I'm pretty liberal about clicking Ice Spinner so that if Meowstic gets Psychic Terrain up, that's gone immediately, at least until I've sussed out the Meowstic set. And then if I decide that I'm not so worried about the Psychic Terrain, I can play it differently. But yeah, Ice Spinner is just here to cover for that one thing, which might not be ideal compared to running Protect, but I think that one threat from the Meowstic is just so dangerous to Azumarill that we're just going to have to make that concession here. And hopefully Pokemon like Morgrim and Magmortar can help Azumarill stay alive long enough to do big damage even without Protect. And of course, since it's a closed team sheet league, the opponent won't know that I don't have Protect, at least until they've seen the other moves. So, I might get some of the benefits of having Protect just by bluffing it. We'll see. Finally, the last slot. I felt like I had a few options. I was considering Yanma for the ability to click Hypnosis into something like a Stantler in case they happen to bring that, so that I can deny a surprise Trick Room mode. I'm not really expecting to see one, so having that little bit of cover for it felt nice when otherwise it's not really something that I've prepped for. And Yanma also would give me a Tailwind setter since I've gone with Choice Band Salamence and I don't have room for Tailwind on that. I considered Gothorita, because I didn't make room for Fake Out or Morgrim. Gothorita would give me Fake Out Pressure. It would give me another way that I can play into a Psychic Terrain mode from a Meowstic. That actually was another option I considered instead of Ice Spin or Azumarill. And given that I have such strong attackers that the opponent might need to have specific matchup pieces for, I actually think Gothorita trapping their Pokemon with Shadow Tag could be very valuable in this game. But I didn't completely see, in an abstract sense, I thought that potential value made a lot of sense with Gothorita, but I didn't completely see the vision all the way through. So I have gone with Sinistcha, our second overall pick, meant to partner with Kommo-o and here to do just that. It gives me a second redirector with the Rage Powder. Of course, something like Lilligant or Terra Grass Volcarona or Safety Goggles, whatever, will not be affected by the Rage Powder, so Follow Me is always stronger redirection. But there's only so much the opponent can do to cover for Rage Powder, and having two redirectors opens up so much space potentially for something like Kommo-o and Azumarill to set up and get going. Terra Water, I don't know, I chose it kind of arbitrarily. Obviously, Sinistcha is one of my best Pokemon to check Quaquaval, which is a Pokemon that I've been a little bit concerned about throughout here. And I probably don't want to go Dragon. Again, I probably don't want to go Dragon into a Pokemon that's specifically meant to help check Quaquaval because that ice coverage seems so obvious in this matchup. So even though Water opens up Sinistcha to some potential weaknesses into Volcarona and Lilligant, it feels a little bit better here, and that gives me, across these four Pokemon, 2 Dragon Terras and 2 Water Terras. So, I have options to click in certain situations if the positioning works out. Life Dew can, of course, help to offset the damage that Azumarill and Kommo-o do to themselves and keep those Pokemon healthy, especially with screens up as well. Matcha Gotcha is not amazing offensive coverage into my opponent's team. It's pretty well shut down by Pokemon like Volcarona and Corviknight, which are two of the biggest threats. But it does nicely cover not only Quaquaval, but also Sudowoodo and Quagsire if we happen to see those Pokemon. And once again, it's another option to potentially burn some of their physical threats like Quaquaval or Slacking if I get a little bit of luck there. And finally, I'm kind of copying Spooky's homework with the Psych Up. Spooky has already brought Psych Up Sinistcha, I think, both of the first 2 weeks, so I don't think anyone's going to be too surprised by it at this point. They'll probably see it coming. But it is a very strong option if I'm able to get Sinistcha set up next to Kommo-o. And obviously this is not the most offensive Sinistcha. I've invested it heavily in bulk, and I didn't make room in its set for Shadow Ball, so it's not really positioned to sweep with just Matcha Gotcha. But even if Sinistcha just has boosted stats that make it harder to remove, and then it can keep clicking Life Dew and keeping Kommo-o healthy, that has a lot of possible value by itself. So overall, definitely going to be a tricky matchup because there are a lot of different ways that my opponent can play it, and it's hard to cover all of them. I really don't feel like I have any read on how this one is going to go, but I think the Choice Band Flying Terrablast Salamence is really strong into a lot of their team. I can create a lot of space for it to operate with screens Morgrim and 2 redirectors, and if for some reason the Salamence isn't doing it, then I have other options in Kommo-o and Azumarill that can set up quickly and hopefully run away with the game. And I've hopefully brought enough tools to deal with whatever weird techs my opponent might have, but I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. And for the first time on my end in PDL Season 7, it is time to cut to my live commentary of the battle. Alright, please excuse anything about how I might sound right now. I was just outside a few minutes ago, and it's cold right now, but my opponent is ready a little earlier than we discussed, and I am happy to jump right in here for sure. Man, I thought a lot about the Quaquaval, and it's not even here. But I do see Meowstic, which could be trouble. I do see Dedenne, which definitely can cause some problems. So 2 of the matchup pieces that I thought they might bring to cause a bit of a headache, but I didn't think they'd bring both. Good call by them. And then, of course, Corviknight, Volcarona, and Oricorio are here. And I don't really know what the Quagsire is going to do, but this is definitely good prep by my opponent. A few of the Pokemon that I definitely thought could be a thorn in my side are here. Just notably not the Quaquaval. They don't have Trick Room, though, I don't think. Maybe the Meowstic gets it, but I don't think they have anything that really wants to play in Trick Room, except maybe Corviknight. So that much is good. What do? I said I would lead Azumarill if I saw Meowstic. That's definitely still an option. Dedenne is a bit of a problem for it. Quagsire actually is a problem for it. It gets water absorbed, so that might be part of what the Quagsire is here for. But I don't hate leading Azumarill. With maybe like Magmortar. I can do Follow Me Belly Drum or, you know, adjust to something else if I see fit. Or I could do Azumarill. What's this Pokemon called? Sinistcha. And threaten the Quagsire immediately. It could be Terra Poison Quagsire. That's actually really strong into this idea. Magmortar gives me a little bit more cover into like a lead Volcarona or Oricorio or even Corviknight. So let's bring Magmortar in the lead, Sinistcha in the back, and let's definitely bring the Choice Band Salamence. Or Quagsire also gets Unaware, right? So actually that might be stronger to this boosting team. They might not have Water Absorb. Let's bring the Salamence to game 1. And I can at least feel out what their game plan is, right? Okay, so it's Oricorio, Volcarona lead. They can do Quiver Dance stuff. There's not much I can do to stop that. But I will go right for a Belly Drum, I think. And I'm glad I'm not setting up Clangor of Soul immediately. I kind of want to know, or I kind of wonder whether I can go for a cheesy little Heat Wave. If I just click Follow Me, that's pretty passive. It's a little bit risky, but I think I'm going to try it. And hope that I can win with Salamence if it doesn't work out. Say hi back to this Oricorio, everyone. They go right for Tailwind and Quiver Dance, okay. This is such a good combo of Pokemon. I mean, I don't know how strong they necessarily are. Okay, burn on the Oricorio. I don't think that matters too much. But, Mirror Herb. Wait, and then they can Baton Pass this out to something? That's so cool. But we're gonna try to Aqua Jet the Oricorio right away and click Follow Me. But that is a solid effort by my opponent there. That is really cool tech. The Aqua Jet seemed like a pretty safe out there, and I guess it was. But yeah, this is such an interesting team. I like it a lot. The Quagsire is here. Again, I think I've convinced myself now that it most likely has Unaware, but it could surprise me with Water Absorb. In any case, I'm just going to try to Aqua Jet the Volcarona. Maybe they like Terra Grass and get me with a Flame Body Burn or something, but we're just going to chance it. And I don't really want to Terrastallize Magmortar. That obviously would help it take something from the Quagsire, but I'm just going to click Follow Me again. They protect Volcarona. Okay, this could be an Earthquake to hit both of my Pokemon. Haze. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So this is still not going to be quick and easy. I mean, Aqua Jet should still threaten good damage into the Volcarona, right? And then I can cover for something like a Grass Terra by clicking Heat Wave. They still have their... Well, they still have their Tailwind up, but I don't have Protect on Azumarill, so I can't just double Protect through that. I could still Protect Magmortar. Or I could switch to Salamence. But I think I'm just going to go for the Heat Wave and hope it works out. Terra Psychic Volcarona, okay. Gets chipped a bit by Aqua Jet, but takes it reasonably well. They do knock out Magmortar thanks to the Tailwind. But I can get either of my other guys in here. Haze and High Horsepower. Ice coverage is possible, but I think if I bring Salamence in, I definitely Terrastallize it. And I think that is what I'll do. I'll just go for a Play Rough into Quagsire and go straight for the Flying Terra Blast into Volcarona. Outrage would probably not be the worst thing here, but I think the Terra Blast is fine. We knock Volcarona out, get a Moxie boost. Play Rough does pretty good damage to Quagsire. It does show Avalanche, but I've turned off half of Salamence's weakness to Ice, so we don't take too terribly much there. That said, I'm not sure how I beat this Corviknight, honestly. Good of them to preserve it. I think step 1 is actually I switch Salamence out so that I have the Temper Flare available. It does give up the attack boost, but I think it's probably worthwhile. And I try to get rid of this Quagsire with Play Rough. Shouldn't take another one. Corviknight goes for the bulk up. Yeah, that could snowball. Missing the Quagsire is also pretty bad there. Okay. Yeah, the Corviknight is a problem. Let me try to chip it. And I'm just going to click Matcha Gotcha. That should do a lot to Quagsire, and potentially it can burn the Corviknight. That might be what I need at this point. It does KO Quagsire. No burn. But I can go for it again. I also think I'm down here to set up another Belly Drum with Azumarill. It's a little bit risky, but it gives me a much stronger Aqua Jet if the Corviknight doesn't knock it out here. Or alternatively, I get Salamence back in to click Temper Flare. And yeah, I'm sticking with... Actually, could Rage Powder here. I think that's a bit more sound than clicking Matcha Gotcha again. Just in case the Corviknight goes for an attack now. Yeah, that'll knock out Sinistcha, but a Matcha Gotcha burn was always kind of a remote win con compared to getting boosted Azumarill in here with Salamence and clicking Aqua Jet and Temper Flare. Aqua Jet doesn't quite get the KO, so we do show the Temper Flare here. They know we have it now, but we take game 1. And I think that went reasonably smoothly. But what to do now in game 2? I do kind of wonder whether we'll see the Meowstic or the Dedenne this time. Volcarona, 167 max speed. Salamence has max speed, so it's at worst a speed tie if I lead Salamence into the Volcarona. That's certainly an option. I could do Salamence Magmortar. I could even do Salamence Azumarill lead this time, because I still want to have the Ice Spinner available if they go for some kind of manual Psychic Terrain thing. That said, even then leading that into Meowstic isn't great because I don't have Protect on either of those Pokemon. But I'm going to try it. I'm going to bring Sinistcha in the back for sure. And Magmortar is reasonable for insurance into the Corviknight. I do also have the Terrifier, Flamethrower, kommo-o. I think the kommo-o is stronger here. Okay, it is Meowstic and Oricorio. So, of course, I'm not sure I want to use my Terra this early, so I'm kind of tempted to actually just luck into Outrage here. It's a little bit risky into a possible... Well, they have 3 different Pokemon that can switch in that I'm not necessarily sure I want to Outrage, right? In Volcarona, Corviknight, and Dedenne, because of the Flame Body, Resistance, and Immunity, respectively, which means they definitely have at least one of those in the back. It's probably a bit safer to click Rock Slide here. And I'm just going to go straight for an Ice Spinner into Oricorio. Okay, they fake out Azumarill. Rock Slide does a lot to Oricorio, but it doesn't quite KO. You go for Tailwind. I'm going to click the Ice Spinner again. It's obviously tempting to try to snipe the Oricorio with Aqua Jet, but if they do set up the Psychic Terrain, then that just doesn't work. So we'll just, okay, they Protect. Alluring Voice does a lot to Salamence. I don't think I'm going to see a Psychic Terrain. I think I'm going to chance the Aqua Jet into something now. Let's still try to pick up the Oricorio, and I'm going to switch Salamence up for Sinistcha. Again, preserving my Terra for now. But I do feel like I'm playing this one a little more awkwardly than game 1 so far. So we'll see how it turns out. We see the Corviknight switch in. So that's probably good news for kommo-o in the back. I'll try to Aqua Jet the Meowstic here. Just get rid of that. Be nice to not have that fairy coverage to deal with later. And I can Matcha Gotcha to try to burn Corviknight. Again, we're back to that. Or I can just click Life Dew to make sure my Pokemon stay healthy. I think Life Dew... I mean, the Corviknight's not threatening a ton of damage unboosted, right? Maybe into Sinistcha it is. I think Life Dew is a little safer. There's a Quagsire. Okay, we do confirm that it doesn't have Water Absorb, but I mean, that's what I expected. I even could click Psych Up into this Bulk Up Corviknight if I want. The Quagsire could Terrasilize here because we know that it doesn't take a Matcha Gotcha. So, what Terra type do I think the Quagsire is likely to have? Given that Sinistcha is my best answer to it, probably something like Poison. I think Poison is fairly likely to cover Matcha Gotcha and the Play Rough Azumarill. But I'll try the Play Rough anyway, just in case, and I'll Matcha Gotcha. It's Terra Steel. Okay, so same idea. And actually, an Ice Spinner would also have been resisted then. That Avalanche is a bit of a problem. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Actually, the Corviknight is already so boosted. I can't very safely Rage Powder here to get a Azumarill set up. I'd kind of like to, though, because if Quagsire doesn't click Haze immediately, then I can Aqua Jet it. And hopefully Azumarill can run away with the rest of the game. The Rage Powder might be worth it here, yeah. The alternative that I'm thinking about is Terrasilize Sinistcha, hope to take an attack, and Psych Up to copy the Corviknight's boosts, but even then, Sinistcha's pretty low. So I think I'm going to go for Belly Drum Rage Powder here. And I could save my Terra for probably kommo-o. Do they click Haze immediately? That's a great play if they do. Okay, no, Recover. Alright, and then I should be able to Aqua Jet this Quagsire out of here now, I think. And I'm just going to keep covering Azumarill with another Rage Powder. But yeah, just trying to deny the Haze here, so that Azumarill can sweep most of the team, and then kommo-o should be able to pick up the Corviknight, I think. Maybe. I mean, and I've saved my Terra, so I can still Terra Fire kommo-o, turn off the Brave Bird weakness, but it might still take a lot with the Corviknight being so boosted. But that's my out at this point. That or like a Temper Flare crit. Oh, right, unaware, it ignores the boosts. Okay, that was the problem with that plan. Whoops. But they turned off their Corviknight's boost by clicking Haze, so I actually still got a lot out of that Belly Drum. I could go kommo-o here. And I can just... Honestly, I'm going to Belly Drum again, see if they let me get away with it, and just Terra Fire Flamethrower into this Steel-type Quagsire. Okay, it switches out. We'll pick up Oricorio here. Do they let me get away with this second Belly Drum? Yes, they do. I can at least get a big Aqua Jet into Corviknight. Here's the Meowstic. I don't have Protect on Azumarill. But let's see if I can still get this Aqua Jet off. And Protect kommo-o. I don't think I ever switch Azumarill out in this position, but maybe I'm wrong, because it might just go down here, and that would be unfortunate for me. I could Aqua Jet the Meowstic. But I think I want the damage into Corviknight. kommo-o will, of course, resist the Alluring Voice now. It could have Psychic. They do fake out Azumarill. Okay, so the second Belly Drum doesn't really get me anything. That's okay, I think. Well, it's going to have to be. I get Salamence back in here. I probably want to lock into Temper Flare. given that after this Meowstic, it's just 2 steel types. We'll get Moxie here. They can knock Salamence out if they want, I think. That Flamethrower does pretty good damage to Corviknight. They go for another bulk up. Salamence will be the fastest Pokemon on the field, though. Of course, Quagsire will ignore the attack boost from Temper Flare. I'm going to Temper Flare the Corviknight and Flamethrower the Quagsire. Temper Flare knocks out Corviknight. And we see that the game ended. Flamethrower knocks out Quagsire with a crit. Don't know if it mattered. GG's to Mario Man and the Azure Bay Chatots. This was a really fun matchup to prepare for and to actually play. Their team has a ton of quiet threats that I had to be managing at all points in the builder and in this game. So even though it's a 2-0, yeah, you can't really ask for a better start to the season, at least for my part playing this team start, since Spooky played the first 2 weeks. Than this. Definitely a strong opponent. Definitely won't be surprised if we see them again in playoffs, but the Halifax Masquerade Men are now 2-1 on the season, and yeah, I'm really enjoying this team so far. And in a few days, we'll see how the rest of the league, or the rest of the week went for everyone else in the league.